Hello and welcome to 100 Days Plus. Vladimir Putin says the Russians wouldn't have been so childish as to interfere in the French election. In the gilded halls of Versailles, the Russian leader denies any meddling. President Macron seems less convinced.
Russia Today and Sputnik have been organs of influence throughout this campaign and have repeatedly produced counter-truths about me and my campaign.
This doesn't mean that we somehow tried to influence the election at all, and it would have been impossible as well.
Angela Merkel doubles down on criticism of Donald Trump. She says it was right not to gloss over her differences with the US. Jared Kushner is in the spotlight. The president says his son-in-law is doing a great job amid reports the 36-year-old is under investigation over ties to Russia. And on what would have been John F. Kennedy's 100th birthday, we look back at the extraordinary legacy of America's 35th president. Hello and welcome to 100 Days Plus. I'm Katty in Washington. Christian Fraser is off this week. He's in France, but he's not hanging out with the new French president. That's what Vladimir Putin's been doing today. The two leaders had a get-to-know-you meeting at Versailles, and you really have to wonder how cordial it was, given that days before the French election, Mr. Macron accused Moscow of interfering in the vote. At a rather tense press conference, Vladimir Putin insisted any implication of Russian meddling was rubbish. From Paris, here's Lucy Williamson. Well, joining us now from London is Andrew Jack. He's a journalist with the Financial Times, who was the paper's Moscow bureau chief and also Paris correspondent. So a great person to talk with. Usually we need Christian here to talk about body language, Andrew. He's off. But tell us, you looked at that press conference. How tense did it seem when they got onto the issue of involvement in the French election? OK, Andrew Jack, thanks very much for joining us there from London, from the Financial Times. Christian, as I said, is off this week, but I'm happy to say that our political analyst, Ron Christie, is going to be with me for the next 4 days. Ron, you heard Andrew Jack there talking about President Putin, involvement in the French election. I imagine coming out of the American election, you might have some questions for the Russian leader. So, how are Chancellor Merkel's comments going down around the world? I'm joined now by William Cohen. He's the former US Defense Secretary under President Clinton. He's now a BBC World Affairs analyst as well. Secretary Cohen, when you listen to what Angela Merkel has said and her take on how the G7 meetings went, how Donald Trump's trip to Europe went, what do you make of it? How do you compare it, for example, to his visit to Saudi Arabia? But you can talk about clouds. Secretary Cohen, thank you very much for coming in to join us. What the Secretary was referring to there, Ron, are these latest reports that Jared Kushner, the son-in-law of the president, went to the Russians and said, could he set up a private communications channel with Moscow during the transition, and that has then put the spotlight again on ties between Russia and the Trump White House. So I guess the question for us is, for you, is how serious is this for the president? So we know that Mr. Trump released a statement in support of his son-in-law. He said he has total confidence in him, also adding Jared is doing a great job for the country. Ron, what are you hearing from the White House about this? Yeah, there's going to be a lot more questions about that. OK, it's Memorial Day here in America. It's a public holiday to remember war veterans. President Trump went to Arlington Cemetery to lay a wreath for the fallen. It's his first public event since he got back from that foreign trip. OK, Ron, it's so interesting, and there is definitely a disconnect and worth thinking about on this Memorial Day. Let's have a quick look at other news that's come in from around the world. The British intelligence service MI5 is to review the way it deals with information from the public in light of warnings ahead of the Manchester suicide bombing carried out by Salman Abedi. British police released a picture of Abedi today, which showed him wheeling a blue suitcase. You can see it there on the day of the suicide attack last week. This CCTV shows Abedi buying food, cleaning products just a day before the attack. Police are now asking the public to come forward with any more information about his whereabouts in the 4 days before the bombing. North Korea has launched a short-range ballistic missile into the sea inside Japan's exclusive economic zone. It was the North's third ballistic missile test in as many weeks. The launch comes in fresh defiance of tough talk from Donald Trump, who promised last week at the G7 summit that the big problem of North Korea would be solved. There is now just over a week to go before the UK election, and although campaigning was suspended following the attack in Manchester, there's been quite a lot of movement in the polls. This is how the BBC poll of polls looked over the weekend. The Conservatives are trending down and Labour is making gains. And to show you how big this shift is, This is the latest from YouGov. It puts the gap at just 5 points. Here to explain it all and this year's tight election is the BBC's Ben Wright. He is with us from London. Ben, what's going on? I thought this was meant to be a fairly clear lead for Theresa May. Okay, Ben Wright, at the debate for us. Thanks very much, Ben. I'm going to get back to you on that one. It is 100 years ago today that John F. Kennedy was born. The young and charismatic politician was 46 when his life was cut short by an assassin's bullet. He only served 2 years as president, but he's clearly identifiable by just 3 letters, JFK, and by many of his iconic speeches. Let's take a look at his life. Remembering JFK. Okay, Ron, I wanted to ask you before we go, as an American who covers American politics and a Republican who served in the White House, the building behind you, what does JFK mean to you? Okay, Ron Christie, thank you very much. We would say happy birthday, Mr. President. It is 100 years since his birth. You're watching 100 Days Plus from BBC News. Thanks so much for joining us. I'll see you back here again tomorrow.